Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, your weekly dose of insider DevOps trends, AWS news, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's January 17th, 2024. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We are a DevOps accelerator for startups that helps teams who are overwhelmed with AWS. We do this by leveraging our over 200 Terraform modules that have been downloaded over 100 million times and are well battle tested. No matter where you find yourself on this journey, we're here to help your startup launch better products faster so you can free up your bandwidth for innovation and nail your value delivery every time. If you're curious about if we can move the needle for you, just head over to cloudposse.com/quiz. Again, cloudposse.com/quiz. Answer a few quick questions and you'll get to book a meeting with me directly. So how can you maximize today's session? First off, our format is very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools or modules, feel free to dive right in and ask those questions. For those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. You can join us live by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. Now, I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's office hours valuable, please share it with your team. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse and find the video there, or send us a short testimonial about the value you're getting. For example, in our Slack team, just go to slack.cloudposse.com. Again, slack.cloudposse.com. Remember, we are not just creating content here. We are building a community around DevOps, around Terraform, and we can't do that without your help. So let's jump into some news and announcements. Pretty light this week. I couldn't find a single interesting announcement from AWS, just more expansion news, more config rules, more region support, more, etc. But nothing really exciting in terms of new services. One interesting thing was this, though. I saw posted by or shared on LinkedIn by DHH, one of the founders behind Hey and a big antagonist of public cloud now and protagonist of moving on-prem. He shared some interesting ulterior theories on why maybe they're making this move. So the announcement is that Google Cloud is offering customers the option to migrate off without paying any egress or transit fees. For some companies, this can be tremendous. For example, moving off of S3 and paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in data transit costs. So Google is now saying that you can say that you're migrating off and not pay those fees. His theory on why they're doing this might be in some way that it more benefits them, because it might incentivize other major cloud players to have the same competing option, for example, AWS, and then Google's hope might be that those customers migrate off of AWS onto GCP. Obviously, you wouldn't want to make an offer like this if you weren't really confident about your offering and that the impact to your business would be nominal. And I'm guessing they've run the numbers on this, and that's the case. So any other insights on this one? Just gonna see my own notes here.
Yeah, it's actually kind of silly how the companies pay for this or charge for this, because companies who own internet backbones who peer at peering points and do all those things. So like AT&T and AT&T and AWS are in some carrier building where there's literally like a 10 gig or 40 gig Ethernet or multiple 10 gig or 40 net Ethernet handoffs that they plug into each other's switches, and they run BGP, and that's how they exchange data, and that's how all these backbone networks actually exchange data and peer. And for the most part, unless you have a complete, as long as you're a tier one provider and you don't have completely unbalanced traffic, like all of your traffic is download versus upload, or anything crazy like that, or those types of things. You basically don't pay a fee to the other networks for exchanging data with them. So it seems kind of crazy that there's a fee like associated with this anyway when you're going from one tier one backbone provider to another. It's just another way for these companies to make money. It's not actually like costing them anything, except maybe some backbone capacity, I guess you could argue, but like, is it really that big of a deal?
Mostly
It's
pure
interesting.
profit.
Yeah, mostly.
Do you think when you opt in to do this, like you're migrating off, they might move you to a more congested pipe? Because
Yeah, maybe. They clearly have QoS running on there, like, so they can definitely say which traffic is highest priority for them, and they have like multiple tiers of that. So maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess in theory you could also find a location where where if you're that, like, the cost of migrating your data off is big enough to make this a concern. Like, you could probably find a location where or basically you, Google, and AWS all have a co-location presence and could do this like pretty cheaply, outside of just sending it over their regular network as well. So I don't know. It seems like a lot of work to go through, to do all this, but I guess for large enterprises maybe it's a consideration.
I'd have to read the fine print, but I feel like one pretty good use case of where you want to like move data around between clouds, like data, like if you have a huge data lake in Google Cloud and you also want to move that over to S3 or leverage some of the other cloud provider data tools like Azure SQL Warehouse and stuff, this would be a pretty sweet use case for that, at least. But it sounds like you just have to literally exit Google Cloud. They don't want you, like from the initial headline of this article. But it'd be great if they eventually do it, I guess, to a point where if you want to have a data lake across multiple clouds, that'd be a pretty sweet feature.
Yeah, probably only a matter of time. Do you remember when you had to spend so much money for data on mobile plans or text messages, and ultimately it all became free? I think the same will be true of this. Once they start making enough money from all their AI offerings, these things will be free.
Yeah, and especially the more that optical networking, keeps making leaps. So the muxing capability, like over a single fiber, used to be, you could, way back when you could get like, I don't know, like 55 megabits per second, and now we're into the 100 gigabit per second, and you've got all these companies rolling out 1 gig and 2 gig fiber, to the home, and all this other stuff. Like the bandwidth is actually becoming so much more ubiquitous, and the technology is making it so that we can stuff so much more down the same physical pipes as we could just 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that I can't imagine that the price of this should definitely be plummeting. But where they see they can make a buck, I guess they will. That's how these companies work.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that was the other theory was related to the EU has been looking at cloud egress fees as an anti-competitive practice, which may well seek to regulate to improve competition in public clouds. Given how much other antitrust scrutiny that Google is under, it makes sense for them to get ahead of regulations for once, especially if it helps deflect attention from their search and ad monopolies. But that was an interesting.
Yeah, and they're actually one of the companies that's rolling out fiber to the home, which is interesting. Google.
Yeah.
So they have.
Are they still? Is Google Fiber still a thing? Because I felt like it stalled out.
Oh yeah, no, they're expanding like
Really?
regions and geographies all the time. Yeah.
It is worth noting there are a couple areas that they completely canceled. Like Kansas area, I think they completely pulled out. And I think the areas that they've completely ended service with has primarily been due to a bad install. They tried out some bleeding edge stuff, and it didn't work out as expected, and the maintenance was too high. I think in Kansas, they paid the particular city they were in some number of millions to go ahead and say, we don't want to deal with this anymore. We'll just pay you, and you guys can clean it up yourself. And but like in Utah, I think they're continuing to roll out still, and San Diego surprisingly has it, but it's only in dense neighborhoods. It makes no sense, I guess, for them to roll out in the suburbs because there's a lot of homes and it's further to run that fiber. Whereas in condominiums and apartment complexes, you have a high number of units much closer together.
Yeah.
I've gone pretty deep down this rabbit hole of trying to get Google Fiber installed, and no luck in the suburbs, at least. That's amazing. They have 8 gigs now. I remember when I was using it, it's on the 1 gig plan, and then 2 gigs came out, 5 gigs came out, now 8 gigs. That's amazing. What do you do with all
But then
that?
the question, well, then the question becomes: is what networking equipment do you run in your home that can support that?
Yeah.
That's a different question.
They'll give you a modem, and they'll even give you a free switch when I was on the 1 gig plan, which is kind of cool. They give you a net.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, then you're basically saying like, okay, I have 7 different people or 8 different people that are each going to take up 1 gig of capacity. Like I'm saying, the Wi-Fi standards aren't there. There isn't 8 gig, Ethernet unless you're running like legit, like running fiber to, to your workstation or whatever.
Great gear to run this type of network.
Inside your home. So it's kind of crazy. But
so the other cool thing about their service, not to digress too much on Google Fiber, is you can get their 1 gig plan, and if you're like, I just need a little extra pipe today. So I was on their 500 megs plan when they had it. I could just upgrade to the 1 gig and then get the extra bandwidth and then downgrade later in the day or the next day. As far as I remember, it was all prorated, which I thought was pretty cool. No need to call in or anything. It was all through the web UI.
Well, that's cool.
That's the same technology they use to throttle you when you try to migrate off of Google Cloud.
Cool. Next announcement was no announcement is no day's announcements are complete without something related to AI. So I thought this was a pretty cool tool which helps you generate SQL queries based on a data model. When your company has a data model with sometimes 1,000 tables and you have no idea what all those relationships are, and even if that's mapped out somewhere elegantly, who can really intuit all of that? So I thought this is a great way. This would be a great way to be able to extract the data you need by understanding those relationships. And that was an open source project as well.
Hopefully the first queries you run taking AI's advice are select queries.
Yeah. I didn't look.
Oops, we misunderstood that one. We just deleted this critical data. Yeah. But yeah.
Another announcement here near and dear to my heart. So Atmos is a project by Cloud Posse. Atmos is a tool for helping you manage the architecture of your infrastructure, the configuration of that architecture, whether you're using Terraform or other tools. One of the things that we are really trying to drive home this year is usability and improving the developer experience. Now, I'm not saying this is done and solved. This is our first foray into improving that on the command line using text-based UI. We're investing a lot more in this over the coming months so that for beginners or newcomers to the project, also even within your company, beginners can start using it with less upfront overhead to understand all the command line syntax and so forth. Obviously, command line syntax is necessary so that you can instrument and automate this with other tools, but a UI is very nice when you're just kicking the tires and getting up to speed or running a few things all the time. So in this new UI, we added, first of all, this mode here. which lets you explore the commands that you have available in your configuration of Atmos. So commands like Terraform, plan, apply, destroy, etc. Your available stacks. So this is where you can deploy things. So in dev, production, sandbox, staging, for example, on the in US East 1, and then in US East 2, and in US West 1. And then over here on the right are the components available, the things you can deploy in each one of those stacks. And you can sometimes you want to flip, you want to see where can I deploy, EFS instead, and then you can invert that and show it by component and then the stack, depending on what makes sense for your use case. We've polished off the help a little bit more, so you can interact with that, dig into any of the commands and get additional help. And we have a lot more things planned in the short term here. You'll hear them here on office hours when those are available and announced. I wanted to have Matt maybe do a quick demo. Matt, do you want to show that?
Sure, I can show it. Let me just share my screen. Can everyone see my terminal?
Yep, nice and big.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So here I'm just running a geodesic shell, which is another Cloud Posse tool that we use for our toolboxes. And I'm in our infrastructure live repo. I can just run here. I can run Atmos, and I actually get the command that Eric, or the menus that Eric was kind of showing there. So over here, you can just use your terminal key navigate, your up, down arrows, etc., to navigate through all the different commands. So here, if we wanted to run Terraform plan, I can page down through all the stacks as an example, find a stack I want to run a plan in, and then I can go over to the right now and pick a component, or let's see if we can find, okay, over here, a stack that has multiple components, and basically then just go ahead and hit enter, and that's my fault. I picked the wrong one.
But we should remove abstract components from that list.
We should. Yeah. I made that as a note. I noticed that. Yeah. So let's pick AWS Backup daily plan as an example. In this case, then it will actually just go ahead and run first. Here, it will actually show you based on what you selected. This is the command that's being run. So this will help you kind of start to learn Atmos and how you run those. But then in this case, it went ahead and ran the plan and told me that basically our infrastructure is up to speed with the what the condition says that it should be. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the quick and dirty demo and kind of how it all works there.
All we wanted to cover at this point. Any questions on this?
This looks pretty cool. Did you guys build this all custom yourself in terms of the terminal app, or were you folks using like Gumroad?
It's basically like from Charm. They have a bunch of tools under the hood in Go for Go libraries, basically, that let you do a lot of this stuff. So
this is using Bubble Tea by Charm Bracelet.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I forgot to show, you could actually, like, in this case, like if you knew that you wanted to deploy in like the US East 1, sorry, UE1 region, you can actually, if you just hit the /, you can start to then filter this list. So, and if I knew I wanted UE1 dev, as an example, I can't type, of course, that's the live demo thing. If you do that, you can easily filter down the stacks that you're looking for, or the commands that you're looking for, or the components you're looking for, if any of these lists becomes like a long list. Like here, if I knew I wanted, artifacts.
If you wanted to add like an additional environment variable, like to debug something in Terraform, like tf debug log or whatever, there's a handful of variables or flags that you could add in. How would you do that on the plan or
yeah, there currently isn't support through through the UI to do that, but that's a good suggestion. Maybe we'll figure out a way to.
Oh, but the short term,
do
you
that.
could probably still export the variable and then still use the tool right after,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And or basically you could run it to see what the command is that was generated, and then just run it on the command line with the variable
sure.
before it as well. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I would say a driving principle within Atmos is that most of everything should be configuration. Very little should be parameters. While when you use Terraform by itself, you presumably are using a lot of different arguments, passing bar files and so forth. So I think the UI will probably, like, for example, you could maybe want to pass additional arguments to Terraform. I don't think that's really the use case of the UI. In that case, use the UI to see what command would be generated, and then you can just run and add flags and do the advanced things on the command line. Alternatively, there's also like that Terraform shell, which is a cool, so that worked. Cool.
Yeah, I just did what you said there, Venkat.
Oh yeah, awesome. You may want to read the token.
Yeah, this is all assumed role, so those will just
yeah.
What was I going to say? The shell, the Terraform shell, is also another interesting use case for Atmos. So if you drop into that shell, it sets up that environment. So when you run Terraform, it's in the context of all the configuration that has been established for you through Atmos. All right.
Yep.
I'll just say before you guys go on that I was excited to see this. I somehow, as soon as Andre merged it, I was somehow upgrading Atmos at that exact time, which is like absurd. It was like within 3 minutes, and the package distribution was broken, so I immediately created an issue. But like, it's super cool. You guys found a good project in Bubble Tea, and you rolled it in nicely. So particularly with the syntax of Atmos, it's complicated. You're picking a stack, you're picking a component, and then there's the additional configuration that can kind of come after the command. I like what y'all are doing. One suggestion I was thinking about was it would be nice. Yeah, let's say you're doing Terraform import and you need to add additional parameters at the end of that. It would make sense to be able to, it basically prints the command for you, or you could then edit the command on your terminal prompt before it gets executed. Simple thing, but like
like a fourth column, basically take the input for the things that you might need to
that
add
would be
to
cool.
that.
That would
if you can escape my Terraform import nonsense so that I don't need to do it, when you have like quotes or square bracket 0 end square bracket, that would be sweet. So yeah, I'd be into that. Anyway, good job, y'all.
Give that some thought.
And so now that you know that these things are possible and these things are going to be coming, please, this goes out for everyone, not just Matt or Venkat, is please bring those up to our attention so we can consider those. Some of the things that I'm hoping that we do in the near future would be showing the chain of dependencies in a visual tree, and showing the chain of imports in a visual tree, so you can better understand the relationship between all of the configuration that you're dealing with.
And for what it's worth, if anyone that's viewing this, I'll just tell you, save your time. That anything that I just leaked in the trace that I had on there was a temporary credential, that the credentials are already destroyed. They're not valid anymore.
Okay, so there we go. Next announcement was something that someone shared in the Office Hours channel. I didn't see it, but it's kind of cool. So we've talked about K9s before, which is a nice TUI-like utility for Kubernetes. So if you haven't seen K9s, this is K9s. So you can see your pods running, CPU information, yada, 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 tail logs. Makes it very easy to interact with your cluster. Wouldn't it be nice to have that for ECS? Well, now you can have that for ECS using E1S. And that's yeah, cool utility. Thanks for sharing that.
Last time I checked, container isn't 1 character long.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I know what they're getting at because it's ECS and the C is just one
yeah.
letter,
Well,
but
it's like then it should have been
it's
called
confusing.
K1S, right? For
Yeah,
K,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're looking for the name of your next Kubernetes utility, K1S is probably still available. All right. Any other things here?
I haven't used this, but this one in particular, but on K9s, one of the things that I really like about it is not only can you see pods, but basically you can jump to any resource that exists in the cluster and see a list of all those things. So you can switch through any kind of resource definition, whether it's a built-in one or a custom resource, and then like keep drilling into all those things. There's like a key sequence to do all that. So it's pretty cool. I'm hoping that ECS has the same thing. So
This is so cool. It also supports the exec functionality. That's
yeah,
cool.
Really good for troubleshooting.
Yeah. Nice README too. Lots of animated GIFs make it easy to comprehend what's going on. Okay, what's next here? So that was that. HashiCorp published a nice post on how to take advantage of the new testing functionality within Terraform. It gives some examples here of the assertions, you know, how you can test your service worked. And another one was that Cisco has acquired the company that is behind Cilium, which is a popular service mesh recommended in AWS, and I think is what's used out of the box in GKE between all the pods. I kept on reading this as insolvent, but yeah, that was the dyslexia, I guess. So they are definitely not insolvent anymore after their acquisition by Cisco. Response in Reddit behind this was overall positive. Was my takeaway from it. The project Cilium is in the CNCF. It's a graduated project. That means it's mature and has supporters. The biggest risk for an acquisition like this is a lot of the core contributors in Isovalent are going to be moving over to Cisco and could be getting pulled away from the project, who knows, to work on more enterprise features. But that's all I know. That was my last announcement. Anyone got something interesting that came across your radar this week? So,
quick thing on K9s for anyone using it. Looks like they got a corporate sponsor, so they have a lot of updates coming out in the past month. So, yeah, they made a small announcement around it, and like, where did all these updates come from? So if you go to tags, you'll see stuff.
How do you mean? Or do they have a tag for like sponsored work or something?
Oh, no. If you just go to their tags, you just have a lot. I saw an announcement somewhere. Unfortunately, I can't cite the source. If you go to their tags, you'll just notice they started dropping a lot of releases though.
Oh, Git tags or Git releases.
Sorry.
I was lacking the context. Okay.
Might have made a mention in there in one of the release notes, but yeah, it went from like nothing for a while to a lot in like the past month.
Hmm. Cool. Are you using K9s regularly?
Not too often. I like the command line more, but it is handy. Sometimes. Yeah, I have I know the kubectl commands well enough, but maybe occasionally for the port forwarding, it's kind of come in handy there. But yeah, since they've been dropping a lot of new releases, I'm not sure which one to use. So, which ones have bug fixes. So, yeah, I can't speak to if the project's gotten, if it's having more bugs now because they're producing more, but looks like they've added a lot more features. I for the most part, I just look at logs, and as Matt Callahan.
Hello and welcome.
Sorry, say that again.
No, sorry. I started playing the video here. It went out. So it said it has security scans. I wasn't familiar with what that is.
Oh,
That sounds new.
the one thing that I've found K9s really useful for is like we had a customer recently that I was working with that we built in a bunch of auto scaling stuff with Kata to both scale the cluster and also like scale the pods up and all those things. And it was really handy to launch that and see the pods, watch the resource utilization creep on all of them, and then see additional pods like show up in the list like dynamically without having to type any commands or kept hitting like up arrow enter to keep seeing like the list of pods. It was really good to just run that and see like a list that was being dynamically updated for me as we were running like load testing procedures and things.
Oh
like
wow,
that.
I can't believe I'm not using it for that. I do the watch command, or I do like
Yeah.
running it every time. It's super annoying.
Yeah, exactly.
I should be using this tool for. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be interesting. Also, what a healthy number of stars. Wow, 24,000 almost.
Yeah, it's useful. I saw this other tool that I came across. I'll just post it in the chat here. It's not Terraform. It's a cloud formation tool, but basically you can, well, it basically you compare two regions in AWS and it will tell you which things are like basically which resources are supported in only one of the regions, only in both of the regions, or neither of the regions. It's kind of an interesting thing, and like it gives you this. So if you're planning like disaster recovery regions and things like that, like for one to back up another, it's really handy to compare the two regions that you're considering to make sure that they have full service compatibility, I guess, between the two of them.
Yeah, interesting. Comparing just US East 1 and 2, you can see what is not the same. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's funny that a third party needs to make this tool, but that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
For exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think what I understand is basically this is also just cloud formation. So like it's possible that the services work and are compatible, but they don't have full cloud formation support yet in one of them. But I wasn't able to dig in more to try to understand like under the hood exactly. But it does say that it's using cloud formation like service specs or resource specs and basically comparing them across regions. So presumably, as long as cloud formation is up to date, then this is accurate.
I wonder if this is an easier way to keep track of the different services that get launched, like at one of these screens. Is it pretty granular?
Yeah.
What were we gonna say, Matt?
Oh, I had shared a link in the chat as well. This project, Atuin, this is not really, it's maybe a tool. There was a little bit of news. The maintainer, the person who created it, basically is going is quitting their full-time job to work on open source, which I thought was cool. But it seems like a cool project. I haven't tested it out yet, and I was wondering if anybody had. But I have this problem of where the hell is that thing in my history? And this seems to solve it in a novel way. So it's kind of interesting.
And it does support self-hosted, so if you don't want to send your command line history somewhere, you can take it.
That's why I haven't messed with it yet, because I don't want to send client secrets over the wire to some random database that I have no control over.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely can relate to that, feeling that problem, moving between workstations and workspaces. Cool.
For what it's worth, I have a script that updates my shell history in my private like .files repo, and then if I'm on a different workstation, I just make sure that it's up to date and pull it down, and it's usually pretty good. But
when I get
clearly,
I just use Dropbox or similar tool that seem to work fine for my purposes.
Yeah, but you don't want to send it to some random database either, right?
Yeah, Dropbox.
You trust Dropbox?
More so. I mean, yeah.
I don't know.
I would trust Dropbox more than this, just because I feel like if I was a hacker, this would be a database. I'd be like, "Oh, I gotta get in there. I gotta get that." It feels like if there was any vulnerability in that database,
yeah. I should have said that my solution involves local encryption, decryption of the file before I send it up to Git too. So I'm pretty like paranoid, I guess, for that kind of stuff. So, but yeah,
that's good paranoid.
Yeah.
Cool. No more announcements. Then we'll get to Q&A.
I've got one more actually.
Okay.
Cron. I don't know if anybody was using Cron, but it's like a calendar, like desktop app and web app. They just got
like cron jobs, like
no.
Like you're talking about it like it's this new thing. Cron, what's that?
Cron's new. Have you guys heard about this? I don't know why the guy named it Cron, but it just became Notion Calendar. So basically, they got acquired, and Notion now has like a calendar native application. And I've been using Cron for a while, and I'm a big fan. So it's kind of and I use Notion heavily for my personal life and team. So it's kind of a nice thing for me. I was like nicely surprised today when it upgraded and kind of got deleted on my machine, and then I saw the email.
You have a link for that?
Random news.
You have a link for that?
Yeah, we'll do.
Business, we share those out. All right. Nothing else then? Announcements? Go. Any questions? I have nothing lined up, so this is a chance for anyone to ask questions on anything that you are facing. Open-ended, doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to Terraform or AWS Kubernetes. Could be other things, DevOps adjacent. Oh, Jeremy asked how you're liking the York terminal. But somebody else was talking there. I cut over.
Yeah, sorry. This is Oliver. I have a couple of questions.
All right, go fire away.
So one of them is, you actually answered, so you gave one, answer on Slack about the question about GitHub Actions. I was curious, what people use in order to vet the, safety of a GitHub action, a third-party GitHub action. So, I brought up that, there's actions by GitHub, then there's GitHub verified actions, and there's, completely unverified actions. And anyway, so when you want to, propose one of those third-party actions for your employer or client, how do you verify that they're safe to use? Do you just, wing it, or do you just look at the code, or is there a tool that you use to to a little bit like, say, Checkoff or Sneak or something like that, but that knows how to do that for GitHub Actions?
So I remember I did not bring up this tool, but I thought of it later on. They had reached out to us at some point. Boost Security is the company, boostsecurity.io. And they have a product that is specifically capable of looking at GitHub Actions and dependencies of GitHub Actions recursively and identifying security misconfigurations with those. For example, using pull request targets potentially in a insecure way, it was able to detect that. And it can scan multiple organizations and things like that. I guess Boost Security would be somebody to check out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm curious if anybody knows of a tool like Checkoff or GitHub Actions, like not GitHub Actions for Checkoff, but a tool that will scan your actions themselves and their dependencies and other upstream actions and so forth.
Exactly.
Bad thing. It is.
Eric, do you happen to know if this tool will detect if one of the upstream actions that's being leveraged isn't pinned? Because I think Matt Calhoun or someone else had shared something where if you don't pin to an actual commit shot, it could be a moving target. Like someone could swap out the tag later, and then you could basically pull something in new, like a week later when you run the same action.
I think this kind of thing. I think projecting here, I don't know. I would assume that kind of basic policy is something that it can do, but I don't know that for certain.
No worries.
I think I read that GitHub recently, stopped supporting that. So basically, there, if you have a tag that you can, like, it's basically permanent. But
no,
that's
not true. They're definitely mutable. We do that all the time.
Okay, I thought I saw something like that.
Yeah.
No, what you might be thinking of was an announcement that I had here in office hours, but I don't know how I'm going to find it. On the GitHub Action roadmap is an item
that could be,
for future. So it hasn't been marked for any particular quarter, but is the ability for actions to publish artifacts of themselves to an immutable place. So it's good that it's on their radar, but it hasn't been prioritized yet.
Right. But that is a great example of something, a tool like Checkoff or whatever, would spot that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Projects. In the meantime, does anybody know of any more supply chain tools that support GitHub Actions? I think this is different. I don't think this was.
Guys, I'm sure whether I have a question, if I may jump in.
Yep.
About AWS IM authentication for database. I wonder anyone had implemented something like this. So we try to move our teams away from static passwords when connecting to Postgres and MySQL. And it's obviously a great way AWS offers IM authentication, but spent already kind of 2 days on it. It seems not as straightforward as you would expect. And they refer in documentation to, you create obviously IAM role and then static user on the Postgres and run a command. They want command to enable IAM authentication Postgres. It's standard RDS, it's not Aurora, standard RDS. But I'm getting the PAM authentication failure, but even had a ticket open with the AWS and they not able to Yeah, well, the question is whether anyone have done AWS IM authentication for the yeah.
Matt Gowie, you want to take this one? You asked this last week. I know you were looking into it. You might have the most fresh knowledge.
Yeah, I kind of laughed when I heard that the question was coming up. I think that maybe going back to the call from, was it last week? I think it might have been. Yeah, going back to the last, like, it's probably like 15 or 20 minutes of office hours from last week would be useful. We still haven't implemented it, so I don't have too much more than, you know, what you and Matt said, Eric. And I kind of missed the question. I might have tuned it out once I realized, like, oh yeah, you're just asking about IAM DB auth, and we just had a conversation about it. So sorry, Darius. But if you want to repeat a
watch it,
question,
yeah.
maybe
it
I
was
can.
last week. I just basically we were getting PAM failure at a kind of error. Even though we tried with using static, it works fine actually when you do it from EC2, because you allow EC2 role. That works fine. But the problem is all of our users use SSO, so we've got single sign-on, and that's a problem when for the people logging from laptop. So yeah, so I'm getting from EC2 with your ID. That's easy peasy. But just getting that, yeah.
Are they sourcing credentials locally and they're still seeing like a failure, or is it like you're expecting that it to push them through the SSO workflow?
So that they generate token. Obviously, you have to generate token. I think the problem is you try the token actually generate for user IAM user or kind of static created user. You get that token, you try to use that token, and then you got failure. And then you try using token for using your username. Obviously, it has an @ symbol, so you use double quotes to kind of to go around error. But that's still getting back PAM authentication failure from Postgres.
Yeah, I haven't implemented it. I was the one that was asking last week, so I'm not sure, but it sounds like something to write up, and then maybe we could help you out in the AWS channel or something. Or it might be a little bit specific to your environment, and it would be kind of difficult to debug. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you.
It's kind of interesting. That helps with security to move it away from static passwords and improve overall security posture.
Yeah, for what it's worth, though, just a quick what you're saying. The username. So, like in your database, you basically like grant permissions to the RDS IM user or whatever you want to call it, and then when you log in, that token that you're getting is actually for that like shared RDS IM user credential that like everyone is basically able to generate a token for. So they shouldn't be using like their own name basically to do it. It's like that shared user.
Yeah, but part of our troubleshooting, we tried both, kind of just using this. Yeah. Initially, in documentation, AWS, they refer it just IAM user, even I thought it have to be that, so we used even exactly what they say, IAM user. And this, like I mentioned, works fine when you log in from EC2, but yeah, not with the same following from your laptop on Linux, Windows, or Mac, doesn't matter. Yeah. So,
yeah, like
I'll post this in the. Yeah, I'll post what I've done on our channel.
Post it in there. Also, take a look at what I just posted. What I just posted in the chat there, that might also be helpful. It gives you a little example of how to walk through it.
Yeah. Also, like when you Google around, it's not so much information. So I think maybe I'll write up some article somewhere to help others once I've got it to connect correctly. Yeah, and thanks for sharing thoughts.
Share that post if you do end up writing it up, and I'll find it useful.
I just wondering what's kind of those days where you do it. I mean, LinkedIn, do your own blog or WordPress? Where do you guys kind of publish it to reach the wider audience or help people? I guess whatever is got
it really depends.
Found by Google.
Yeah, you know, when people have Medium personal blogs, if this is part of your own business, put it there. If you're growing your own professional network and you want to kind of showcase your background and experience, I just posted as a long form post on LinkedIn. You can do that. Lots of options.
I mean, also like people use GitHub for like all different things, like even you're writing petitions. I wonder if
Yeah,
maybe it was from GitHub or some page.
that's one way
If
too.
I have maybe another kind of GitHub related question, or if I still have a time.
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah, I work with the GitLab in the past, and I like the feature flag with the GitLab, where you have your branch, you add this branch to the feature, and then you've got part of your infra build only. I try to find the similar stuff with the GitHub Actions. I can't see kind of equivalent and looking around. The only thing I can find is writing custom GitHub Action workflow. So I wonder if anyone had something similar done kind of. So basically, we have like quite big infrastructure, and we don't want to build everything in the workspace to test it, but only part. Otherwise, it will be too expensive. Basically, we've got like data lake, which is gonna cost a lot of money. And in GitLab, there was
Just
this
feel like
option.
I bet there is functionality like that in GitLab. I would need to understand a little bit more. It feels like this would be very opinionated on like your platform, where you're running it, whether you're using EKS or ECS or Beanstalk or Heroku or Vercel or whatever. And so which ones of those does GitLab support? And are you
No, I think
using
he's saying he used to use it on GitLab, but now he's asking, can he do that in GitHub?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I need to understand what GitLab was doing because I haven't used
Yeah.
So
GitLab.
let's simple infrastructure like VPC, maybe let's say EC2, S3 buckets, so nothing kind of special. And basically, your developers create a branch to test the changes. So what you would like before you allowing to merge them anywhere to test it in a workspace, in Terraform workspace.
Okay, so it's specifically in the context of Terraform being able to do that. Gotcha.
Or CDK or any other, but doesn't have to be. But in Terraform, like you create even manually workspace, and hopefully in your code you have a prefix with your branch, so you can build in the same account clone of your repo.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you want to actually, the challenge here, not to build everything, but part of your code. And GitLab has an answer for that called features, and it's built in the GitLab.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of solutions for Terraform in GitHub Actions, but nothing as specialized for the purpose of like feature branches or preview environments with Terraform. And I still, so I'm so close to this problem from our perspective and what we do that I don't see generally how something like this could be done without a lot of assumptions on how you do your Terraform, where that Terraform is deployed, yada, yada, yada. So.
But it's kind of a generic kind of best practice branching strategy and which flow you're using.
But do you allow anything in your infrastructure to provision NAT gateways or IAM roles and accounts or all these other things? It really opens up a Pandora's box for security if something could do this. So I think there has to be some assumptions of what the minimum deployed infrastructure is to support that capability. Are they in a shared account? Are they in dedicated accounts? For example, if we're talking AWS, how does that look like if you're doing it on different clouds, which have different concepts for those things? Is it everything from, is it Kubernetes cluster and above, or does it include the Kubernetes cluster? Or like, I just don't understand like how something like this, where the line is drawn for these preview environments.
So in our case, it's simple, let's say infrastructure, no Kubernetes or any other kind of complex services, just VPC, few machines, glue jobs, few RDSs. And I had it actually working previously in actually using the other kind of the CICD. And we basically in a code we had in any resource we had the variable added, which was your PR number. and each pull request we were building clone of all the repos. So everyone had a clone of the whole repository, but that wasn't actually that big. It didn't have like a data lake, so it wasn't that expensive. And on each closure of a pull request, it will destroy your workspace. And it was great because everyone could test the whole code before even asking to review pull request.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ideal world. You have confidence that, and you know, I go to Lambda, I type 354 my pull request, I find the clone of the Lambda, whether I work on it or not. I think for me, that's ideal.
Yeah, so I agree. It's really nice, and we call these preview environments, generally speaking.
Yep.
They're similar to what Heroku used to call as review apps, and you see a lot of startups that have been formed around this concept of creating ephemeral environments, and we've been trying to crack this holy grail for the last 7 years or 5 years. And every time we run into a company and deliver this, they always have different requirements, different needs, different things that a universal solution we haven't been able to fully solve for, although we have solved for specific cases. Like ephemeral environments within Kubernetes, pretty straightforward, easy peasy. Generic ephemeral environments, like for each pull request with Terraform, it's complicated. Like in the simplest case with Terraform, if you're creating these composite root modules, a root module that has all of its Terraform code in it for your dependencies, calls other child modules and so forth, yeah, pretty straightforward. I'm still not going to say it's cut and dry, but pretty straightforward. But that from our experience, from a long-term maintainability perspective, that composite root module is a anti-pattern. Yet that is one of the more common patterns prescribed by HashiCorp in their documentation, and I think is also what's prescribed in GitLab for how to do Terraform. So if you have Terraform root modules, and those Terraform root modules depend on other things to exist, now we have a pretty complicated problem to solve and a dependency order between root modules that need to be provisioned. And anytime you get into larger scale infrastructure, these sorts of things start to happen. So if you can assume that things like your VPC is in place, you can assume your IAM roles are in place, you can assume a lot of things are there, the problem is simplified. But then again, that's a very specific scenario you're solving for that is suitable for one company and not another.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah. And actually, to be honest, in the previous place where I had it actually working, we had the two parts of Terraform. We had the account Terraform, which was static state all the time, included IAM and VPC.
Right.
And then I had the infrastructure, which we built only for each pull request. So we didn't have to build basically VPC on each pull request because it would take ages. And so, yeah, I agree. But yeah, in a different scenario now where you have a huge infrastructure and like saying different modules, and then you have to make each module work with a workspace and add the unique prefix from your pull request number or branch. And yeah, it gets more complex and complex. I guess the bigger infrastructure is specific to company. But I think each company will want eventually code tested before merge as much as you can. So I think that's the holy grail, whatever that means for a company or your business or your project.
I agree. And that we support, and that's some things that we do with our GitHub actions, but I just don't think it is implemented in the way probably that you're thinking about it for your applications and what you've been working on based on what was described within GitLab. But something very interesting for us and what we do. So we can talk more about that.
Yeah, right.
Venkat saying just Cilium Enterprise stays one minor behind their open source software release. At least that's what the sales rep mentioned to us. Oh, I'm missing some other thread. I guess there's more chat going on here I didn't see. Yeah.
Someone was asking about if we've used Cilium on AWS as a replacement for the standard CNI, VPC-CNI.
It came up recently. Was it you, Venkat, were you using Cilium on AWS or?
We looked at using Cilium. I cannot
get it to work as easily as Calico at the time. So
Okay.
for ease of use and I guess better documentation at the time we were trying to roll it out, we ended up going with Calico. But Cilium seems like the way to go. You do get quite a bit more functionality. The really confusing part was we jumped on a call with their sales team and trying to understand the differences between enterprise and open source was a bit difficult. I think they may have improved that on their website now, but I think their enterprise is like hardened binaries and other things that may matter depending on your organization. And you also, I think you get some HA on the egress as well. So if you're doing egress static IPs, or sorry, if you're doing like the NAT gateway equivalent, or yeah, I guess they call it egress gateway if I'm not mistaken in Kubernetes. I believe if you want HA on that, that's a enterprise only feature.
Mm.
But then they also tell you that they're the same, and that's where I get confused. So between open source and enterprise, they say it's the same functionality, but then they have these upsells. But there's no serial key, and then it gets confusing on kind of how it all works on enterprise versus open source. We didn't end up moving forward. We're just using open source Calico. The other thing is, oh yeah, Elvis, if you're paying for support, you're probably set. You'll get everything that's advertised. I believe I went to another meetups locally in Southern California. If you have one of those workshops, Elvis, in your area, definitely recommend checking it out. They have like these field CTOs that show up, and some of them, or at least in my case, the guy he had worked on the Cube project. They're like really knowledgeable folks. They'll tell you about Cilium and anything else you want to know about the CNI and Kubernetes networking. And it's a free workshop too.
Cool. Oh, wow. I didn't realize how much time we have spent today and that we are already over for the hour here. So thanks, Venkat, for sharing that update on Cilium and your experience there, and everyone else for your questions and support. We're going to be posting a recording of today's session to our YouTube channel. If you haven't yet subscribed, go to youtube.com/cloudposse. That's where you're going to find the office hours. We do have a Slack team. If you haven't joined already, go to slack.cloudposse.com. We converse in the office hours channel for today's meeting. There's also the registration for office hours at cloudposse.com/office hours, where you can subscribe to get the weekly invitation. Finally, if you are interested in working with Cloud Posse and seeing if we can move the needle for you at your organization, book a free discovery call by going to cloudposse.com/quiz, answer a few quick questions, and you'll get a chance to book a meeting with me directly. Talk to you soon. Take care.